I think I'm a pretty creative person, and food and music allows you to be free with your creative thought. You know, there's really no borders, at least not yet. And I try not to put myself. Paprika is a favorite spice of mine, simply because of it's colorful, it's very fragrant, comes in spicy, it comes in sweet. That'd be a favorite. Butter used to be, but now I don't necessarily need butter for. I mean, I've always played with food. Like, instead of going to a club and spending money at the bar, I'd rather go to a nice restaurant and taste food and learn food and see what things work, see what doesn't work. And so over time, it just becomes natural. Like, it's totally second nature to me. That's why sometimes it gets boring, you know, or sometimes I feel like I don't want to pursue it because it's just too easy. But you know, there's other parts of it that I need to master, you know, so that keeps me focused. But, you know, as far as the food part, it doesn't matter what ingredient you throw at me, or what kitchen, or how big the kitchen is, what the fire source is. It doesn't matter what it is. I'm confident that I can whip up a good meal. I've just been doing it too long. I've been doing it since I was a child. You know, it's just automatic now. It's an interesting story how I even fell into it on a professional level. You know, just from getting into trouble as a kid, you know, and probation, and the probation led to community service. Community service led to working in Atlanta's community food bank. Community food bank led to a job at Project Open Hand in the early 90s when there was only 500 clients. Project Open Hand is a nonprofit that cooked food for the people with AIDS in Atlanta. So that was a great experience. That was my first cooking job as a prep cook, and that was in like '94. So I was around 19 at that time, and but before that, my community service with the food bank was my first introduction into just the back of the house and going into a professional kitchen, you know, because we were in charge of picking up the food that was being donated, and my job was to calculate the weights and what was being picked up. So we would go to restaurants. Some restaurants I ended up working in the future, like Panels and Paul's. I remember going into that kitchen and just being blown away by the size of it, and just that it was just so grand, you know, and you go in there through a back door and you have no idea what's behind that door until you get in, and it's just like a whole world of energy and lots of people in this small space and so much going on. And it's just at some point overwhelming, but I never felt overwhelmed, but it was just because you never see it. You know, you're in a restaurant in the front and everything's calm and serene, and then you get in the back and it's just a whole nother monster. And that just drew me in at that point. You know, like I said, I've always been cooking, but at that point I was like, okay, this is something that's really sucking me in, and I wanted to be a part of it. Well, I grew up, you know, hip hop kind of raised me, so I've always had it in my bloodstream, and it's kind of been running neck and neck with my career. This is my third project. I've done a few other projects, all independent. But, you know, just like you said, it's just a creative process. You know, being able to take music and write words that mean something to it to me, is just a cool thing. And to have somebody else that doesn't know you or never heard you before like it, that's even a cooler. You know, it's pretty much the same thing with food. You know, someone comes into your restaurant, doesn't know anything about you, and you serve them a plate of food and they taste it and like it. Now, you know, they're a fan pretty much. You know, they're giving you the thumbs up, you know, and the same thing with music. To be able to just, you know, my process with music is, you know, I have a partner, and, you know, I bring music to the table, whether it be sampled or an idea or something I wrote or a hook. However the process, many different ways the process starts, again, similar to food, you know. But I bring it to the table, we build on it, kind of like my SoChef. We work on the idea, and then we record it, and then we fine tune it, you know. It's very similar to the kitchen process, especially in the sense that it's always something new, you know, and like a lot of musicians would agree, after you play it about 20 times, you tend to get bored with it and you want to move on. But you know, if that's what the people like, or that's what you need to push at that time, that's what you have to push. But in the back of your head is always thinking of something new. I'm constantly I'm a big record fan, vinyl fan. And, so we're constantly finding new music, listening to music. Old music always sparks new ideas, and so it's music is always on my mind. Always on my mind. Similar, just like food. It just helps keep the creative spark flowing. I think people are more focused on the food more so than the establishment and how fancy the establishment is. I remember there's a big phase, I would say in the mid-2000s, of these $1 million restaurants and people trying to duplicate what's going on in Vegas and New York. And Atlanta was still very young, and it's coming up now. But at that time, I just think it was too much. Those restaurants would open and the next year they'd be gone. And just because the ticket price you got to throw onto the menu is just too much for the average person. I think now the trend is more so, again, putting the money into the food and just providing quality food and just keeping the core of a restaurant simple, And I totally agree with that concept, because if you go out to eat, service should be on point and the restaurant should be nice, but all the super extra things that go into a fine dining restaurant, those are more so for experiences, where people nowadays, they want to go out to eat more than once a month, so they don't want to have to break their pocket every time they go out, but they still want a good meal. So, a lot of chefs take heed to that, and they're opening more casual restaurants, but still have a fine dining food. You're still getting that quality piece of fish, you're still getting porcinis and high-end ingredients, but, they don't have to throw the $30 price tag on it, because they're not using the super fine linen and the super fancy silverware and all those extra things that bulk up that menu price. So I'm totally a fan of that. At Food Therapy, we're kind of doing the same thing. It's a pretty simple concept, pretty simple dining room. It kind of gives the allure of being fine dining, but it's still a very casual atmosphere. It's kind of a good mesh of both, without the high-end price tag on the menu. So that's what we're working on here.
Fire burns as this cold world turns. The heart yearns to feel concerns. The mind learns that one must earn and grind hard till ash and earn. Under siege, still I believe I will achieve. Got tricks up my sleeve, interweave plans to proceed. It's all preconceived. Don't be naive, hard pressed. Don't need much rest.